are live. And you can hear me fine?
Sweet. Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Awesome. Oh, we are back. It's
Yeah.
been, what, a couple months?
It's been 4 months according to YouTube.
Four, really? I didn't think it would
Four
be that
months
long.
since we either live streamed or put out a video.
I would have, guessed, it's, 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Time flies. But yeah, we're back and it's dynasty season and yeah, it feels good. Do we want to address kind of what happened there? Because we were putting out, I think, like one to two videos a week for the first like handful of weeks of the NFL season, and things just kind of got busy. Like you got busy with school, and yeah, we just couldn't quite keep up with it. So we figured we'd just start fresh in the off season here. So yeah, I mean it's officially dynasty season, and I'm excited to be back on here talking some dynasty with you, man.
Yeah, exactly. It was tough to just basically, I don't know, feel like we're making really good videos, but also while the season's going on, because you had to have everything up by Sunday, and then if you didn't, it was waste.
Yeah.
So it just felt like it was waste. So we kind of figured if we just reset in the off season, we could actually make good content because we need some time to do it.
Yeah.
Now we have time to do that, and we can provide videos that are relevant throughout the whole off season.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, definitely big respect to all the content creators out there that are making fantasy football content during the NFL season. It's definitely harder than it looks.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely have big respect for that. We're going to try to do better. And, but yeah, I'm just excited. It's the off season. It's a little more chill now. I feel like this is truly dynasty season. This is where you're really kind of looking at your teams and assessing things and deciding what direction you want to go in and starting to make some trades. So yeah, this is one of my favorite times of the year for dynasty.
Yeah, this is where we can shine, it's
yeah.
our off season stuff. Yeah. Whereas in season, it's kind of just a shit show.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah, I mean,
hope you guys are hurt,
Yeah, and we're reaching so many leagues, and we're trying to keep up with everything going on, and manage our dynasty portfolios and everything like that. So yeah, that was definitely a challenge. The first season, managing all these teams while simultaneously trying to keep up with the channel here. So yeah, we definitely learned some things from it. We're gonna be better, and yeah, it starts here. We just figured we would get on a live stream and just kind of say hey to anyone out there that still might be watching us. Hopefully we get some of you guys back here. But yeah, we want this channel to be a thing. We want to do some good things with it. Want to have fun with it. So yeah, this is just the start of that. We just wanted to kind of say hi to everyone out there and start talking some dynasty.
Yeah. And one last thing before we actually talk dynasty, I was just gonna mention that. Yeah, we actually got plans of making some series and good dynasty content, especially whether you're a new player, experienced, around off season stuff, which is all of dynasty basically. So yeah, you can look forward to that if you're watching right now. And
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we got way too many ideas that we've been talking about doing. So we'll definitely kind of narrow that down and start to put out some stuff that we think will be helpful to anyone out there, regardless of kind of what your skill level and experience is. And yeah, also if you guys have any ideas for us, definitely put them in the comments. Let us know what you'd like to see on here.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what do we got kicking for today? Normally we'll kind of just call each other, and we figured it's actually would makes it pretty good. Probably YouTube live stream podcast. Normally we don't have to think about what we are going to talk about. Though we're just kind of going. We're just kind of yapping.
Yeah, for sure.
What's on the dynasty?
Yeah, I mean the combine's coming up, so of course that's a big thing, and the NFL draft isn't too far away. So we could just kind of talk about what we've been doing with our dynasty teams recently, and what we're trying to do with them now, before the combine, before the NFL draft. I mean what's your approach this time of year?
Yeah.
Of course, rookie season is starting to kind of ramp up and become a thing.
Yeah.
We anticipate that the value of these rookie picks is this is probably about the time that the value is going to start going up and steadily increasing until you're actually on the clock in your rookie draft. So are you trying to like buy picks? Have you been like selling any? Like, kind of like what's your strategy like this time of year, like with your dynasty teams?
Yeah. Last year would be more relevant. I was actually trading away a lot just because of how good that everyone knew how good like the top four picks or then and then the top seven it was before the draft. So I was
Right.
trading everything at what was like peak value at the time.
Mm,
This year, however, I mean I do have a lot of top picks, but this year it's kind of the opposite. People are not as excited about this draft class.
right.
But with that being said, I figured like okay, so it's time to buy picks this time around.
Hmm.
The issue is if you've been trying to buy picks, at least in my circumstance, like it's not easy to do. It's been very difficult actually to buy draft
Yeah.
picks.
Yep.
And then especially it's just because now we have like these running backs and tight ends that are in this draft class that are the strength.
Hmm.
Some of my teams like I have a strength. It's like I got a tight end sitting around, and I can't even like trade them into draft picks because people are just
Yeah.
like making it. It's the same for like if you have a veteran running back, you could easily trade them for like a first last year because there's no running backs really in the class.
Right.
Now, like it's very difficult to trade a veteran running back for actual draft picks because people can just say I'm going to just trade picks. So,
Right.
so you need to give up a receiver or quarterback.
Right.
I don't know. That's just kind of how it's been going, and I haven't been really looking to do that. So it's been hard to get
Yeah.
draft picks. So I've been kind of just staying still. I did get
Mm.
obviously a couple trades done,
Yeah.
but not much luck with
Yeah.
acquiring draft picks.
Yeah. I mean, like, it definitely seems like the narrative is that like there isn't like quite as much excitement around this year's like rookie class, but at the same time, like if you've been
Yeah,
out there in like your real leagues, like sending trade offers, like trying to buy picks,
yeah,
like it hasn't been easy. You know what I mean? So like I'm not, even if people like realize like maybe this class isn't like quite as good as last year's, or it might not turn out quite as good as like last year's ended up turning out, it's still not like easy to buy them.
yeah,
So I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect there between kind of like what the narrative is and like
yeah,
what the reality is kind of, out in the streets, like in real dynasty leagues with real money on the line. So, I mean, I guess like thankfully for me, like in a lot of my leagues, I've already had like a ton of picks. Um, and so that's kind of been like a nice position for me to like be in. And like especially on like teams that were like rebuilding last year, and now I'm like trying to like turn them into contenders. I kind of feel like by having all these picks, like I kind of like am in like the position of power where like I have the assets that like everyone wants this
yeah,
time of year, those being the rookie picks. And so it's been fun like being able to like kind of throw those around a little bit and not like haphazardly. I mean, obviously like I want to make sure I'm getting a good return for them. Otherwise, I'm perfectly content to keep them and either make the picks or trade them on the clock or whatever. Um, but I feel like I've been getting like pretty good value and a lot of opportunities. And so I've made like a good number of trades. Um, and yeah, basically, I mean, like kind of like my goal with like making trades that I've done in like the past like month or two. Yeah, especially on these teams that I'm like turning like rebuilding team into a contending team. I've actually been doing like, some tiering up, which is not something I tend to do a lot. Like I'm more of like a down tier kind of guy. I like, accumulating that extra value, kind of betting on the uncertainty. But it's been nice like having the luxury of like to tier up. I've also been buying like a pretty good number of running backs, surprisingly, which is not something I
yeah,
typically do this time of year. And especially like right before a draft class that's like filled with good running backs.
yeah. But I think
But
you're able to get them because there's so many running
right.
backs coming out, which just makes it like that is what that and tight end I think are the easier
Mhm.
positions to buy right now, unless your name's like Brock
Right.
Bowers basically.
Exactly. So
Um,
I guess I'm willing to take on like some of the risk. I mean, I think for like the most part, I've been like pretty strategic about like what running backs I've traded for. So I actually like made a list here. Like here are running backs I've traded for in the past like couple months. Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, 2 shares of David Montgomery, Joe Mixon, Tyrone Tracy, but then I ended up flipping him, Braylon Allen, Tank Bigsby, 2 shares of Trey Benson, although ended up flipping one of them. Rico Dottle, and then I ended up flipping him. Tyler Algier, Marshawn Lloyd, Justice Hill, even a Deuce Vaughn share I got for trading Burton away. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, most of those names, I mean, most of those names are like bigger names, like, like the elite dynasty stud running backs like Bijan, Brees, etc. Or they're just kind of guys that I feel like have pretty secure roles, like Kyron Williams, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, whatever. And then some like second year backs that I'm kind of like buying low on, like Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, we've got a couple of
Hank Bigsby, I guess, is the third year, but like Trey Benson, guys like that. So I feel like I'm not saying that like, of course I'm taking on some risk, because any of those NFL teams could add a running back, and maybe I'm not feeling quite as good about my trade if that happens. But I felt like pretty good about all those specific running backs and what I had to give up for them. So yeah, I think because this draft class is so good at running back, and that's been, the narrative to such a big degree, that like it's kind of created a market where like you can potentially buy running backs at a reasonable value. And that's what I found so far. So, and that's been great just to kind of like get that like kind of locked into some of these rosters that like badly needed running backs. Cause like on the teams that I was rebuilding on last year, like none of them have like any running back. So it's nice, like, not that you have to like set a lineup in February, but it's nice like looking at some of those rosters now and feeling like I don't have to build an entire like running back room, via rookies in the rookie draft.
Yeah. Cause that's, less than ideal, but yeah, it's if you can piece together even just some backups, like veterans, stuff like that, then
yeah, and also like I think a big emphasis for me too is like I want to start the season fast. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to have like a running back room of like all rookies, and then like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, I'm like, oh, like when are these rookies gonna finally like earn their roles and like really get like a bigger workload, and then I'm going starting the season like 1 and 3. And then, by the time these rookies get going, like I'm too far behind to like make the playoffs. And then like I've wasted another season effectively like rebuilding, even though I was like hoping to contend. So I'm like, even though I might be taking a risk with some of these guys, like Joe Mixon, like, I didn't think that like the Texans would really be like very likely to add a running back, though I was just like watching a video on Fantasy Stock Exchange where they were like ranking like all the NFL teams in terms of like how likely they are to like add running backs in the draft. And they had like the Texans in kind of like the second tier of being like, second from the top of being kind of like most likely to add one. And I was kind of surprised by that. So, so maybe that's an example of like one that is a little risky. And actually that was a trade that we did in a league. I gave you Braylon Allen in the 212. And you sent me Joe Mixon. So I thought that was a win-win trade. Like you had a load of running backs on that particular team. And I was just like looking to like, basically like start next season fast. I needed some running back help. So like, yeah, maybe some risk in that, but I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah. It's, that was one of those deals where, it kind of just makes sense. Like I got not really a reason to, hang on to a Joe Mixon when I get a pick and another young running back, but for you, like to, turn two assets that you can't really start, without hitting on a draft pick or having a Breece Hall injury that, you can have it into a veteran running back that. Yeah.
But you get younger at running back, and you also get like a pick, which would just be nice for like the flexibility of it.
Yeah.
Maybe you make the pick and you add a running back there or whatever you need. Just gives you some nice flexibility. It's also a piece you could move to like move around the draft board. So, and what's funny is like that's the type of trade I would typically make, is like tearing down, getting like a younger running back and a pick on top. But yeah, I find myself kind of on the other side of things this offseason, which has been kind of fun, because it's always more fun to kind of just like just kind of throw picks around and being able to just kind of buy whatever you want. But that's pretty much what I've been trying to do. Yeah, start the season fast, I mentioned, and also, of course, like just clearing some roster space for my rookies, because I still have a good number of picks, even though I've been trading quite a few of them. So I've just been making some trades, like trying to, see if I can get anything for some of kind of like the dead weight on my roster, the roster cloggers, like, Condre Miller or Sincere McCormick, or, I'm trying to move like an Isaiah Davis share right now. So not that those guys don't have any value, but just like need to clear some room somewhere. So like it's like, can I get a fourth? Can I give you like a couple of those guys for a third? Can I get some fab? Can I move up in the rookie draft? Like those are the kind of trades I like to do to create that roster space. So that way when the rookie draft happens, I don't feel like I have to like cut players from my roster that have value and just get nothing for them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's depending on what your team is or different managers. I mean, some managers probably have like the opposite issue where they're like they have roster spots and they have like no draft picks.
Right.
It's like
And those are the managers that I'm looking to like make those deals with.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to find those managers that have like no picks, have some, players they can easily cut from their roster and be like, hey, would you be interested in Condre Miller shares, Sincere McCormick? Like give me that 26th third. Like I'm not even asking for like a 25 picks. I already have too many. So like I'll take 26 or 27. Just like give me something.
Yeah, I have been trying to get a lot of 26, 27, just like thirds and fourths, just in any deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean I don't really have any issues. I'm kind of in the middle of like I don't really have a roster where there's no way I can't cut like even like 4 players, even if it's just like a guy I like.
Sure.
It's just like a player that's always going to be on the waiver wire, or like very very likely to be like sub 20% owned. So I just like never have like a gazillion picks. It's either I'll have like a lot of first in one, or just like like a first and like a couple reasons. Like I never have like just loads and loads and loads of like picks by the end of the season. Especially just like competing in leagues.
Yeah.
Maybe you ended up losing them.
Yeah, I did recently have to cut like a couple Kenny McIntosh shares, a few Tyler Goodson shares. Yeah. So, that hurt my heart a little bit, but not.
But they're pick upable again. Like that's the thing. Like you might have to drop them now, but by the time you make another deal, like they're back on your roster.
Yeah, and then you can just say, re-add them. So, I would definitely do that. Also, just with like, free agency, another thing that's going to be happening soon. I definitely value, like, if you're kind of like managing the end of your roster and like maybe making some waiver wire pickups, I'm definitely looking for those, like some of those interesting players on waivers that are going to be NFL free agents, that are going to be, potentially changing teams this offseason, very soon here. Because those are the kind of players that have a chance to go up in value, because you just never know, like they end up in a good landing spot where there might be some opportunity for them to start or get some playing time. And so they, or maybe they sign a bigger contract than you thought they were going to get in free agency. So there's just potential for their dynasty value to increase. So like, I'm definitely paying attention to like, I've done a lot of like Googling, like, Desmond Ridder contract, or like who's a free agent?
Probably like quarterbacks are like the only ones.
Yeah,
really
quarterback.
fun.
I was just about to say that. Yeah,
Wow.
like I've been adding a lot of quarterbacks because like you just don't know, like guys like Mason Rudolph or Kyle Trask or guys like some of these guys are going to end up in a great spot where like they might have a chance to like start the season as like the starting quarterback for that NFL team, and so like you just don't know how that like quarterback carousel is going to end up. So it's just like, let me stockpile as many as I can, see where they end up, and I'll keep the ones that end up in good spots, and I'll cut the rest, and then I can re-add that Tyler Goodson or Kenny McIntosh share at that point or whatever. But like that's kind of what I'm doing with like waiver wire right now.
Yeah. I actually, my favorite one you didn't name, but like he's not going to be on waiver wires this year. But if you could ever just like see an owner's got him, and hopefully he, like, I guess if you had Trevor Lawrence for right now, it could be because they might not even realize he's a free agent. But like Mac Jones, he just like fits like the whole like Darnold, the like Baker Geno thing, where like no one's even thinking about Mac Jones,
right?
But like he actually was scoring fantasy points. And like a lot of them, and like everyone was hurt on that team anyways. Like he didn't even have Ingram and like all those players. So like if he finds himself, like he could easily find himself on one of those like Browns or Raiders or something like that. Or he could find himself in like just some random like situation where the starter's like not that strong. Another one that like, even though I'm the AR guy, they play the Colts twice a year, and he lit up the Colts both times. Like, what if they just brought in, like, I guess they're going to bring in someone,
Mm.
to compete with AR or whatever, like back him up. What if he went and played like was like AR's backup? You know what I mean? And
Mac Jones.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then with him getting hurt all the time, like you could open up an opportunity for Mac
Oh
Jones
yeah.
now to start playing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I mean, like nothing against AR, and of course, I know how you feel about him. And he certainly still has like a ton of upside. I'm not like giving up on him or anything, but certainly like whatever QB the Colts signed to back up Anthony Richardson is someone I'm going to be very interested in owning, just because there's a chance like he gets benched again or he disappoints, and that backup could be making a lot of starts. So yeah, that's one like with all these like QBs, I'm just kind of stockpiling on my dynasty rosters right now. I'm hoping one of them like lands in Indy for sure. And also another similar one to Mac Jones that I've been stashing lately, and I kind of thought I was out on him, but I suddenly find myself like adding him where he's available is Zach Wilson. Because think about it, like first round talent, and look at the success that like Geno Smith has had, that Sam Darnold has had. Former Jets quarterbacks that struggled in New York but went elsewhere and were suddenly a lot better. So like I have to think that like NFL GMs like could be thinking that same thing. Like, hey, like there might be some untapped potential there for Zach Wilson. A former first round pick. So I think that one's interesting. Also, another couple guys that I think could end up in potentially like starting spots if the dominoes fall just right are Jimmy Garoppolo and Carson Wentz. There's been a lot of talk about like the Rams quarterback situation that like Stafford could get traded.
yeah.
And it sounds like the starter there could end up being like either like Jimmy Garoppolo or Aaron Rodgers. So I think that's kind of interesting. Like Garoppolo's a guy you can just kind of scoop up for free in some leagues. And then I also read an article about the Jets potentially being interested in Carson Wentz as like their like bridge quarterback, and potentially being interested in like Tanner McGee, like trading for him from the Eagles to like back up Wentz, which I also think would be really interesting because like how long is Wentz really going to be able to hold down a starting spot before getting benched? So I think all those guys are interesting.
Yeah. Wentz is just like he fits like the mold for me of like that's a guy I want to roster because we've seen him score fantasy points, runs around, like that. That just sounds like a guy that if you're in trouble, like he could be your QB3 or whatever. But yeah, you're mentioning Zach Wilson. I was thinking about him, but there's a bit. I'm like out on the Zach. I'm not gonna roster him in like any league unless there's just like some major news. But the reason why is like the difference between him and like all these other quarterbacks is like those other guys are like actually backup quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like Mac Jones, like no one cares about him, and he's like free if you were to try and get him. Mm-hmm. But like obviously you can't pick him on the waiver wire like Zach Wilson will be on everyone. But the difference is like Mac Jones like actually is a backup potentially like going to starter, whereas like Zach Wilson just like an emergency quarterback on the freaking Broncos, like you can't beat him with Stidham. So it's just like I don't know. Once you're in that spot, like I think he's kind of just he falls in that dead pile.
Just because he was a third stringer last year?
Yeah, he's just a third stringer. Like, we've seen, like, literally, like, no NFL success except for, like, one game. Like, Mac Jones literally made the Pro Bowl. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I know that they can't really be compared as, like, but, like, Carson Wentz, like, literally had an MVP season. So there's, like, a difference to me, like, a major difference between those guys and, like, then it's, like, Zach Wilson's, like, just, he falls into he's going to be out of the league more than likely.
But I mean, think about Geno Smith. Like, how many years?
But he was a backup. He was a backup though. Like
was
he came in. He actually was backing up Russell for a while, or at least the season prior. And Geno Smith was making starts the season before he started. You know what I mean? Like he was actually hanging around as a backup. So like that's also why I say like he was like literally a backup. Like Darnold was a backup. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference. Like you gotta still be like backup quality.
Yeah,
like if you can't back up the Denver Broncos, like that's just like a red flag. Like I don't think you're coming back.
Quarterback feels so much deeper now than it did like a number of years ago. Okay, so like I guess Zach Wilson got beat up by Jarrett Stidham for like the backup QB job, but like it probably wasn't by like a landslide. And like Stidham's like a pretty solid backup, so like I don't think that's like too embarrassing.
Yeah, I think Stidham's solid. I do think Stidham's solid, like for sure. Yeah. Like it's not like, but like if he's not a backup this season, you know what I mean? If he's not starting on a roster, it's just like I'm completely like
Yeah, but it's not like he lost to like, Matt Corral or like Jake Fromm or.
But those guys are in the league though. Like that's the difference. Like you can't lose to them because they're like Zach Wilson's the next Jake Fromm, or like he's literally the next. He's the. It's funny you mentioned Matt Corral. Like he's literally he's going to be the next like XFL superstar.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just think it was like a big so I'm not even wasting a roster spot.
All right, fair enough. I mean, if Zach Wilson doesn't like end up in a good spot, if he's like that to be a third string QB again, like I'll just cut him from the dynasty roster. But
Carson Wentz, I like the Carson Wentz and whatever. Okay. And if you're gonna take a backup, if you're gonna take a third quarterback, like make it Tanner McKee or something right now. Like don't waste it on Zach Wilson. Like
I mean McKee like lit it up and like very small sample like when he was like thrust in there. When, like Kenny Pickett got injured after Jalen Hurts got injured. So I think he's really interesting. I mean you don't see like trades in the NFL a lot for just like some like random like backup QB like that, but like I wonder if like the Eagles would let him go. Like I wonder like what that compensation would have to be. I mean would they just take like a 5th or 6th round pick or something like that for McGee and just get something for him and like they don't really like need him that bad obviously. So
probably anything because honestly like there's other teams that have like tradable backups. I mean I don't know if they're any good or not. But yeah, like obviously people love the Milton and like the Hooker as like a trade candidate.
Yeah,
I don't think any of those deals are ever gonna get done. Like they're probably just
it seems like it's sadly like it seems like those deals like never happen. So like it's not particularly likely. But if I have the roster space, like I'll roster Tanner McGee and just see if it happens, and if it doesn't, and if I need the space by the end of my rookie draft, I'll just cut him then. Not a big deal.
Yeah, no, I definitely like the Colin Wentz though as like one of those top guys that can just actually take over a starting job. You might hold it, you might not, but
And what do you think about the Rams quarterback situation? You think Stafford's going to end up on a new team, and could you see someone like Garoppolo being the QB there, or maybe even like Aaron Rodgers? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I have no idea the Rodgers, and I'm not even if Rodgers goes somewhere, it doesn't affect me. Just whoever their backup is for if I own them, that's the biggest effect. Because I could have cared less for Rodgers the last few years. Like he's just you might as well just start like Andy Dalton over him anytime. You start Mac Jones. Whoever's like a starting quarterback that day, you could just start him over Aaron Rodgers. So who knows where he'll end up? Like he's on his deathbed. I
mean, he wasn't that bad last year. I mean, like he threw a lot of touchdowns. So
he had some games.
Big game toward the end of the season.
Yeah, he had a couple games. Like obviously that one with Devontae Adams where like he threw him like 200 something yards. Like there's no way Rodgers didn't have a bad game that time. But like I don't know. I think it's more likely Stafford's just gonna stay put. I don't see why they would trade him. And sure, Jimmy Garoppolo would be interesting, but he basically just would be like freaking Aaron Rodgers if he went and stepped into a starting role with the Rams. Like,
but it was interesting that Garoppolo like stepped in week 18 last season and put up just like coming off the bench cold. He hadn't like basically played a snap or thrown a pass all season, and just came off cold, came off the bench cold. Put up 334 yards, couple touchdown passes. So that was kind of a interesting reminder of like maybe he could be okay in there, and like maybe the Rams noticed that and like hey maybe he wouldn't be that much worse than Stafford at this point. Not to put Stafford down. Like I love Stafford. I think he's a Hall of Famer. But it's just kind of interesting there. So like I definitely added some Jimmy Garoppolo shares off of waivers. I even successfully traded for him. Just gave some junk away and got Garoppolo back. So I was happy with that. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I definitely like any quarterback, and seeing how Jimmy G just like can operate in LA. Like I particularly like that landing spot like last year or whatever, 2 years ago, I guess. But it never happened until whatever it was, like week 18 this year. That didn't surprise me at all. Like I've been trying to hold him on rosters. I do think he's another good candidate. I know there are some rumors. I don't think anything will happen, but
I mean, he's probably like one of the better backups in the league. I mean, he was a starter in the NFL for a number of years until recently. So like, I think that'd be a good situation. I mean, like on the Rams with McVay there and the weapons that they have. Like, I think Garoppolo is a guy that like you could probably get like pretty solid like fantasy production from if you needed to use them, or maybe you could like maybe after like a good game or two, you could like trade him away for like couple thirds or something like that. Maybe even like a late second if you were lucky and he was really hot. So yeah, just good to roster guys like that. Um, Anything else you want to talk about? I know you wanted to end this around like 8 o'clock, which it is right now. Anything else you wanted to touch upon, or anything else you want to say before we wrap it up, or what are you thinking here?
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, maybe one more conversation. See what I don't know. Talk about non-backup and third string quarterbacks, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah.
we could talk. I mean, we could talk about some of the rookies. I mean, are there any that like you're excited about that you're kind of like thinking like that you're earmarking some of your picks of like, hey, I might be taking like this guy, or maybe I want to trade up so I could be in a position to draft this certain guy, or have you had a chance to like study the rookies like too much? Is there anyone that's kind of like on your early list of like guys that you might be targeting?
Yeah, I haven't been doing like too much research as of late, but like familiarize myself, prior on the rookies and like, I guess like to call out a couple players like, I mean obviously I think if you're in a tight end premium like Tyler Warren is like extremely interesting. Like it looks like an absolute monster, and like I mean he's not just the only one, but like Loveland kind of feels like just because there is a tight end actually going ahead of him, there's other great players in the class. Like Loveland, I also think could like you can get him probably more just off projections cheaper than Warren. And sometimes just like people don't need tight ends, so like they might fall in your draft. I really like those guys. And then like honestly, I haven't been seeing like too much hype. I've been actually seeing some negative stuff for Ibuka, but landing like just because he's not like he doesn't run like a 4-3. He's kind of like the slot archetype. Like I seriously think like I just see Emeka Ibuka just to be like a printing fantasy points like from day one. Like obviously, hopefully he doesn't get absolutely killed on his landing spot. Like hopefully he doesn't land with like the Steelers or something like that.
Yeah.
If as long as that doesn't happen, like I want to come out of him, out of drafts with like him and also like another like last player I'll mention. Again, these are all just like good players for good reason, but like try Travion Henderson. Like I just can't imagine a spot where he's not just like a fantasy superstar.
Yeah.
Like he just seems like the guy that's just gonna go in and just like print fantasy points regardless of where he goes.
Yeah.
Like, I just it's just so hard for me to like think of a scenario where these guys aren't like they just seem like guaranteed hits to me.
Right.
And obviously they could rise in draft capital and they're already projected to go pretty high, these guys. But those are just some of my favorite like top names so far.
Yeah.
You got any?
Yeah, I mean, like at the risk of stating the obvious here, I mean, Ashton Genty is a guy that I'm really trying to get some shares of. I mean, he just seems like he's the premier asset in this rookie class, and I don't have any 101s, so I'm trying to trade for one right now. I offered Amon-Ra St. Brown for the 101 in a .25 point per carry league. So managers considering it. We'll see if we can get that done. So that would be nice to kind of lock up 101 and make sure I can get a Genty share. And that would be, it seems like that would be the league to do it in for sure. But yeah, I just like, I love those like generational running back prospects because it seems like there are just like so few like workhorse backs in the NFL these days that like you have to believe a guy like Genty is a guy that is going to get the great draft capital, is definitely going to be a first round pick in the NFL draft, and just seems like he's a special talent. So I love to get my hands on guys like that. Like I remember like the draft with like Bijan. Like I was just like salivating to get like as many Bijan shares as I could. And the rookie season wasn't great, but last year was awesome. And man, if you own Bijan right now, like you're feeling great.
And this is like a rare chance to just like pick up the next Bijan. It feels like, and
it kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it could just be really like a lot of parallels, and then. And that's why I mentioned like Henderson. Like I know it's kind of hard to compare anyone to Gibbs, but like he could be kind of like the Gibbs to the Bijan in this draft class. Not only just because he can get like really high draft capital and be good. But like, who's more valuable right now in Dynasty, Gibbs or Bijan? It's I'd say it's kind of like split, or just like they have the same value or whatever.
Yeah.
And
who do you prefer
between Gibbs and Bijan?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if I just like had to own one of them on a dynasty team, I would take Bijan, simply just because like he doesn't have to fight with Monty. But if like Monty wasn't there, then like I don't know. I mean, like it would be kind of hard to imagine not taking Gibbs, just the way he's played. But I guess if Monty leaves, like they'll probably bring someone else in. So I'm not even gonna really overcomplicate that. I think I would slightly prefer Bijan.
Yeah, I mean that's where I'm at. I mean, like Gibbs is amazing, and like I'm a Lions fan. Like he's the real deal, and like I have one share of Gibbs, and definitely not trying to move him. But like, yeah, I think the tiebreaker is as simple as the fact that like Bijan really has like no competition. I mean, of course, like Algier is like the clear handcuff, but he really has just become a handcuff at this point. So
here's a good way to put it, actually, of like why. And I feel the exact same way. But like Gibbs, the reason he has competition is potentially just because he's like a smaller, like speedy back, whereas like Bijan literally can do it all.
Yeah,
so,
he's that workhorse type.
Yeah, so it's hard to imagine that they, try to put someone else in there to, eat goal line carries or something, like kind of in the
right. See, that's the thing is like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like both Gibbs and Montgomery each score like so many touchdowns. I mean, like it seems like every week you watch the Lions, like each of those guys is like scoring a touchdown seemingly like just about every week. So, I mean, you can't complain too much, but like Bijan, I mean, there's like, at this point, it just seems like there's such little chance that like if the Falcons get in close and are running the football, like Bijan scoring that touchdown. Like there's no chance, there's like such a little chance you're going to get vultured by Tyler Algier. Whereas like with Gibbs and Montgomery, it's like 50-50 anytime they're at the goal line and running the ball, who's going to get the touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, talking about those rookies, like Genty obviously can catch the ball. I don't know quite to the extent like his skill set is, but I believe coming into the season, he was actually one of the better receiving backs, but like obviously, that's not really what he had to do this season. Whatever, running for like 2,000 yards is, what he's, asked mostly to do, but, like Henderson can really catch the ball out of the backfield, so I love that. So I just like a good comp I was gonna make for like Henderson is I ended up taking like 2 Jaden Daniels last season. Obviously like at pick whatever, like 2 or 3 behind Caleb Williams, or I guess like pick 3 because there was Marv. But like the reason I love Daniels so much was the fact that like Caleb like might project to be out like a better NFL player. But he doesn't, obviously run as much as, I know this is not like a one-for-one comparison to the Genty Henderson, but it's just like sometimes like the cheaper player that you can draft, like you can actually just, like I don't really see a reason why they can't be like as productive. So I felt like that was just like such an obvious one with like Jaden Daniels. And now, the price difference wasn't that much, but like when it comes to Genty and Henderson, I mean like who knows where Henderson's going to go. It could be like at the 105, it could be like the 108, just depending on what things happen. But like I can easily see him like being that one running back that pushes Genty, or just like is the consensus 2 back and you're maybe you're getting him as like the 4th back, or who knows what.
I could see that. Like maybe he goes like earlier in the NFL draft than expected, and maybe has a good combine, and maybe he's one of those guys that just shoots up and all of a sudden he's like the RB2 in the class. I could totally see that. I already feel like there's a ton of hype around Henderson lately. Yeah. And it just seems like I could see his stock continuing to go up and up. And maybe like imagine if he lands somewhere like the Broncos with like Sean Payton, and you start getting like the Alvin Kamara comparisons, and they're going to do like that and that, and the Joker role and all that stuff. Like you can just like hear all the narrative now. So like, I think that would be really exciting. I was going to say, but I remember in one of my leagues, for the rookie draft when it was like the Bijan year, like I passed on a trade where like I could have like the way it turned out, like I could have still gotten Gibbs if I had traded back a few spots. and I would have gotten like a first the next year. So
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
do think like those tier downs, like in the first round, where you just like move back a few picks, and just kind of bet that like there's not gonna be as big a difference between like the two players as maybe like everyone would have you believe, and if you can like add like a first the following year on
Yeah.
top, like those kind of trades typically age pretty well.
Yeah, that would have been the better comparison than like the Daniels and Caleb, but like
Yeah.
literally, yeah. I mean, Bijan and then you get like at one, but you can get Gibbs like oftentimes at like pick 5 or 6 in the same year, which
Yeah.
could be very similar in this year's draft class with like Genti and Henderson. So
Right.
I mean, yeah, it
Totally.
doesn't mean that like I don't think Genti will be better, but like he could be much closer than you might get. Who knows what you can get in between that? Probably easily a first. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would definitely take Gibbs in a
Yeah.
first over
Yeah.
Bijan, even though I prefer Bijan. So,
Oh yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I think there are some interesting receivers as well. And like, there could really be some good value there because like everyone's so focused on the running backs and tight ends. And
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Maybe even QB. I mean, I'm not really that excited about the QBs yet. Maybe that will change. But like, I'm always excited about like
Yeah.
getting things at a value. So like maybe QB and wide receiver could be, there could be some sneaky values there. So like definitely don't like sleep on those guys or forget about them.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested to see what happens with just because like I, still own a ton of like first and everything, and sometimes just like multiple firsts, and they're like, maybe they're sitting in like mid, and I got some later ones kind of like staggered in the same league, and I'm wondering what's gonna go on with these quarterbacks because like, if I needed a quarterback, I mean I wouldn't be like too scared, if you can get like the top quarterback, pick 4
Yeah.
or 5 or beyond whatever.
Yeah.
Still a lot to be determined there, but like I don't know, I can almost see just with this class like people not wanting to get all to touch the quarterbacks, but it does make sense to me because like I would rather just go trade for like one of like 23 or 4 quarterbacks
Right.
rather than just like, and you might even get like something on top
Yeah.
rather than like bet on like a rookie, and
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily even really have too much to do with the actual players themselves. But I'm also seeing speaking of quarterbacks as well, like the Jackson Dart and the Milrow
Yeah.
being like pumped up pretty, Dart more so.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, like, maybe people are like excited because he's like this like I don't know, like Old Miss white quarterback, and there's he's kind of like mobile, like Vanilla Vic style.
Okay.
But like I'm not like really, and he did have good stats, but like I'm just like I'm seeing people like wanting to take him at like in the first, and I just TBD on the draft capital, but it's just kind of like saying, just feel like Will Levis type dynasty pick to me.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes in like the second round of the NFL draft, I mean, it's historically it seems like it's kind of hard to get excited about anyone with that draft capital. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it works out like too
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, if he squeaks into like the
Yeah.
late first round or something, like maybe I'd feel a little differently.
Yeah, I mean, if the NFL is like feels really, I mean, even then though, like a lot of these late first rounders, like, they don't end up panning out. So I mean, we'll see if I change my mind. Like,
Yeah.
I'd like to like a player like that. But if I am going to take a quarterback, it's like not a first rounder. Like I'll at least make it Jalen Milrow, because I mean, I don't know if he can throw the ball on an NFL team, but he can certainly run, and that's really all that matters for fantasy. So I'm a little bit interested on him just to
Okay.
see if he can get in some like really weird like landing spot where there's just like some chance that he actually can get out there, and hopefully he's actually cheap. Like I'm never gonna draft him
Yeah.
with high capital. Just not gonna happen.
Yeah. And even if you are kind of like almost like forced to draft a quarterback in your rookie drafts because like maybe like one fell to you at a value you weren't expecting and it's just like too good to like pass on, it doesn't mean you gotta keep them forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're a window to flip them and trade them into like a more established quarterback could present itself, even between like your rookie draft and the start of the season. You know what I mean? Like you never know like what stories are going to start, could come out during training camp that like, Cam Ward's lighting it up and looks amazing. And then boom, you can flip them and get someone you feel better about. So like, yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world if the value presents itself to like draft one of these quarterbacks, even if you don't really fully believe in them. So that's, another thing to consider as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As long as you're liking the price, they follow you.
Hmm.
I'm just a little nervous because like at least my teams could, I could pick a quarterback, but I don't love I don't love taking quarterback unless it is like a great deal.
Yeah.
If I'm not like loving them myself because that means probably no one in your league wants them,
Right.
and
So
I
you
don't
do have
want
to
to be and I
consider
want to be
that.
stuck with that. Yeah, because
Yeah,
if
for
literally
sure.
everyone's passing on them, like you
Yeah.
actually you literally need them to be good. Like you need to like wait it out and like them to actually put up a good game.
Yeah.
Like
But of
if
course,
people,
you can't help but like think of like Bo Nix and like Michael
yeah,
Penix last year that like it didn't seem like people were like dying to draft them, particularly early. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they weren't even in the conversation of like the first eight. And then usually
yeah,
like Nix was going like, very end of the first and like Penix usually like, early to mid
yeah.
second, depending on like what, when you drafted. But like, yeah, I mean, obviously like those both seem to
Yeah.
like work out really great. So it is kind of a
Yeah.
reminder that like, you just never know. You know what I mean? Like if they get the draft capital, like they're worth a shot at a certain point.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that was just such a unique class though, because
Yeah,
you never can you ever get like Bo Nix at 2-1 or even
yeah,
like 112. It like literally the only reason why is because it's if you pass if it's on uh if you had to take Nix, you'd have to pass on like Brian Thomas, Bowers potentially,
yeah,
Ladd. Like it was just such a good class where you'll never get like see that again basically with like Nix, especially with Penix where you know, and obviously just because he was like a backup to Cousins and that whole weird situation. But like, yeah, what if he? I think they answered it all. Like, these quarterbacks is like if you need a quarterback, hopefully you just drafted one last year because now
yeah,
they'll never get
yeah,
cheaper. So it feels much worse. Like I get why these quarterbacks are, people are too hot on them because it just you might be getting a similar like profile to Penix or Nix last year, but now you have to pay like what like double the price or something like that. Like it's just not very fun to do. Like so.
like double the price. You mean if you're like buying Knicks now or?
No, like instead of you could have taken a very similar prospect and like
Oh,
Knicks at like the the 112, and now
right.
you might have to pay like the 1-3, which might even be more than double the price.
Yeah,
And so
I see.
like it was just kind of like I know your league might not even existed, last year you may have just started one this year, but it's
Hmm.
just like it's tough to like make that draft pick when you know how cheap
Yeah.
quarterbacks were
Oh, for
to
sure.
the
And
class.
what's your prediction? Like, do you see like at least one of these QBs like going in like within like the first like few picks and like rookie drafts typically, or do you think it could be this situation where like no one really wants to draft them and like everyone's kind of playing a game of chicken
Yeah,
until like the late first?
I'd be shocked if like there wasn't one in the first 4 picks. Like
Okay.
if they could. I'm just gonna assume Cam Ward's like going first, or gonna be the first quarterback, and literally like the first couple like 2 picks of the draft, probably number 1 overall. And if that happens, like you just don't pass on quarterbacks like that can run.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is weird though. There are a lot of quarterbacks, so like I can see things dropping just because people are like, I don't need a quarterback. I got
Right.
2. I got 3. I got these backups. I got Carson
Yeah.
Wentz and Zach Wilson.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. For sure.
so yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation. Like if we were just a year ago when it felt like there was way less
Right.
quarterbacks because so many just came out last year and
Right.
Darnold and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, then I'd be very shocked if like Cam Ward's making it to pick like 3 or 4.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, it seems like it could be like a bit of a different market. So like that's
yeah,
something I'll be interested to see like how it turns out. And I wonder like if the quarterbacks do end up going pretty early, is it because like people are genuinely excited about them? Or are they just like, they're just a quarterback with good draft capital and mobility. I'll just like take them.
yeah,
Or is it something that's just driven by need where it's just like, oh, I need
yeah.
a quarterback or I know they have a lot of value in super flex league. So this is where you're supposed to take them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wonder like kind of what the thinking will be if they do end up going early. Like, is that excitement about them legitimate or is it just sort of like, I'm just kind of doing the standard thing?
Yeah, exactly. And then like if I get in that situation, especially maybe if it's like early on, like right after the NFL draft, I'm doing a rookie draft, and I have to make the choice of like, am I gonna take this guy, or am I gonna like take some player because maybe the player behind them, like I don't feel, it's kind of like a tier break or something. So now you're kind of in a weird situation. Yeah, I'm not sure how all that will work out. But yeah, I do have a lot of picks that I could find myself in that situation. Like the 106 or like the 105, whatever. So
yeah.
I guess I'm looking forward to seeing how that all plays out.
One other thing I've been kind of considering a little more recently with like QBs is like thinking about like the value of a quarterback in college that like made a lot of starts in college, that started for like multiple years. Cause like that was like something that Bo Nix had. Like he made like a ton of starts in college and you see like how well he turned out. And you look at some of the other QBs that only like started for a year or whatever. Like Anthony Richardson or, I'm sure there's some other examples, but like even like Jaden Daniels started a lot of games in college. So it's just kind of interesting. Like, I wonder if that's kind of like a bit of a trend that like could be somewhat predictive of like quarterback success, at least like early in the NFL. Cause like, even if like they're eventually going to be good, like, I mean, we know how much that's going to like, how much like their dynasty value is going to be impacted by how they do early, with how impatient people are these days. So that's kind of something I've been thinking about. Is that something like you consider at all?
I mean, well, I mean, it is something to consider, but then also, then you think about the flip side, like before Knicks plays, obviously Daniels, like, didn't have any concerns just because, literally the season he had. The season he had in college was just like nuts, where like Bo Nix, I mean, he's a great example for games played because he literally has the most starts in NFL or in college history.
Yeah.
Like, there's no one in history with more. So, I can kind of see like both ways. Obviously, seeing how it worked out, like pretty shocking that what is he, like a 5-year college player, 6-year college player? He might have even been more than that. I don't even know how many years he played. It was just absurd. But yeah, I mean, I can see the value of like these veterans, and then like balled out, and then you have like younger guys like whatever, like Caleb, and then like recent years like AR. Like take some time to develop. It'd be like interesting to look into to see, these top quarterback prospects, if there's something to do with like getting into a hot start and like starting more games. If there's any correlation there.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, we got 3 people watching right now, so I don't know who the heck those people are, but welcome to the stream. We're glad to have you here. I wasn't sure like who would be watching.
We had I had the number up. We had 6 earlier at some point. We're talking about backup quarterbacks, I think, though.
Very nice. Well, that's great to see. Like, welcome to the channel. If it's your first time here, we're just kind of starting things back up after a little bit of a hiatus, but we love talking about Dynasty. Definitely plan on doing some more live streams, putting out some recorded videos as well. So yeah, definitely consider subscribing if you've enjoyed the live stream and what we've been talking about. Feel free to say hi. Like, we're probably not going to be on here for like too much longer. But we got some rookie talking. That was definitely fun. Like, I'm sure we're going to be like, studying these rookies like more and more. Like, I'm going to be trying to like watch like, more of their tape and really get a good sense of these players. But definitely been consuming a lot of YouTube content though. And, I've been hearing like, at least what everyone else is saying about these rookies. So I'm definitely excited to kind of, get a firsthand look at them and kind of see what I think. But yeah, I'm definitely excited for, rookie drafts. I mean, it's not that far away at this point. So, definitely a fun time of year. Anything else you want to add or talk about before we get out of here?
I guess it's just the combine started today, but obviously, linebackers or something like that, whatever they were. So, we'll have some 4Ds and whatever, just some, the combine freak performances coming up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Was there any good ones last year? Jalen Wright had a really good combine. I'm just trying to think what were some of the names last year? I mean, obviously Worthy.
Oh yeah, with the 40 time, of course. Yeah. I can remember like more of like the Senior Bowl last year. I feel like that kind of like didn't that like
Ladd was like a big.
Yeah, that was the start of like Ladd and like some guys like that were like suddenly kind of seemed like starting to skyrocket in terms of like where we were expecting them to go in the draft. So I think that'll be the most interesting thing because like the guys that like do well at the combine, like all of a sudden, like, I think the real impact of that is that, like, they're probably going to get better draft capital. You know what I mean? And so if they get better draft capital, like, we know how that impacts like dynasty value. So I think that's probably like the biggest takeaway from the combine is that, like, to some degree, like, perception is reality. So, like, even if you think that like the combine's overrated or whatever, like, it's at least going to impact draft capital, which is then going to impact dynasty value. So now maybe you should be a little like leery of like some of the guys that are like just combine heroes and like didn't have great college production, or we didn't like think that much of before the combine. So, maybe if you draft one of those guys, maybe you think about flipping them or trading the pick on the clock for someone that's like dying to draft this like combine hero. So yeah, it's kind of a, nuanced thing, but yeah, I do think it has an impact, for better or worse.
Yeah. And then one other thing, maybe quick mention, but like because it's we're even before the combine, so like we don't even really have any. It's like hard to kind of have like the darlings of the draft class and like sleepers, but like I've been seeing two names just like coming out of everyone's mouth. It seems like one's like Harold Fannin.
Oh yeah,
and the other one is running back. Can you guess who?
Is it Tootin?
No, it's Devin Neal, and
oh yeah,
like I it could be a good like I mean just I don't know it could have been good to look back if we could think back to like the last couple draft classes and see who like kind of were like the early like fantasy darlings, but like this year it's just even if you like I can't take any credit for. I wasn't like on these guys or anything before other people. I did see Devin Neal had like some insane primetime game, which I remember watching and going like, "Hey, is that guy in this year's draft class?" And that's probably where he got a bunch of of his hype starting then. But I don't know. It's interesting. Like they're almost like anti-sleepers because of everyone knows them.
Right.
Everyone already like plans on taking them. You got any thoughts about like the sleeper players? Like, is there any value to be had there?
I mean, I think potentially. I mean, like, I don't want to just assume that I'm not going to get good value on a player because he has hype. I mean, in a lot of cases, like, the hype is there for a reason. But of course, like, it can get out of control to the point where if they're just going like way earlier than they should, then okay, I'll let someone else draft them. But I'm still open them to falling at what seems like a value. And I guess it also depends on kind of like, does the hype align with like my opinion of the player and like what I saw from them on tape or, what I think of them, of their profile or of them as a prospect just overall. So yeah, like I think the thing with hype is like, it's something I consider. I mean, because of course, like you want to draft a guy that's likable because then he's like more tradable, and of course I love to trade in Dynasty, but like, hype isn't like the be all end all. It's something to consider, but it's not going to like, dictate like, oh, I'm definitely going to draft this guy or I'm definitely not. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of part of the equation, I guess. But yeah, I actually did have a chance to watch like Devin Neal's like college highlights, and it does look pretty good. Like I liked what I saw from him. Also, like I've been like writing down like comparisons that like people have been like making to like all these like rookie prospects just from like all the YouTube content I watch. So I got like a list of them here.
Okay.
And so the comparisons that I've heard for Devin Neal so far are Alvin Kamara, Tajay Spears, and Joe Mixon. Yeah. So kind of an interesting trio there. Also, I watched Woody Marks' college highlights. I thought he looked pretty good as well. He's been getting compared to Tyrone Tracy.
He's the guy that went from receiver to running back?
He might have been. I'm not sure. I feel like
there is one of them, and so
there is one. I'm trying to remember who that is now.
Him.
Was that? Oh, I think that was Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith.
Okay, yeah, I can remember the guy's name.
Yeah, Brashard Smith I wasn't quite as impressed with, but maybe I'll take another look at him. But Smith has been getting compared also to Tracy, as well as like Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, even Bucky Irving.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, kind of interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like no comparison is like ever perfect, but I just thought it was kind of interesting to write some of these down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely excited to like watch more of these guys, and yeah, I mean, if with the combine like kind of like already starting or basically being like right on the horizon here, like who knows? Like, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the impact of that is, but like, it might be like your last chance to like maybe trade for some of these rookie picks at like a decent value. So like,
Yeah.
if you're at all, trying to like acquire some picks, like now might be the time to do it before
Yeah.
the hype really gets going with the results of the combine.
Yeah, like the first, it seems like they've been just like the window is out, whatever. Like it's out the window. Try to get them like before the hype, just like a while back. But seconds, thirds, fourths, like
Yeah.
those are more so like when you can't attach a name, people might just be more likely to give away their 206. I actually just traded for a 206 yesterday. So
Okay.
I mean I don't know what I'm looking at quite yet. Just obviously things so much is to be determined, but
Yeah.
hey, I still got the pick and I can move around, whatever. So,
Yeah.
um,
Actually, I think one of the probably this is probably the best advice I can give if you're trying to acquire some rookie picks and you're having a tough time with it. This might not be the answer you want to hear because I know a lot of people don't really love like tearing down and probably don't believe in it to the degree that I do. Like I'm all about like a good down tier. But like that's probably like the easiest way to acquire picks this time of year.
yeah,
If you're like giving up like what's considered the best player asset in the deal. So, if there's someone that you're willing to get off of, like, let's say like Jamar Chase, who finishes like, the wide receiver one last season by a pretty considerable margin. I mean, like, it's kind of hard for him to top that or to like stay there. So like you could argue that it's likely that his dynasty value is going to go down, even though he's still probably going to be a stud, of course. Like, of course, we're not like dying to trade away Jamar Chase, but like that's just like one example. But like if you can find like a stud on your roster, or just a player who you think has kind of peaked in value, now could be a good opportunity to like do that down tier and down tier to someone at the same position that you think has like a decent chance to potentially even outscore them or maybe give you 80 to 90% of the production that, your stud would give you. And then, what can you get on top? Can you get some draft picks on top, as well as potentially some, a player or two thrown in, but when I'm down tiering, like I usually want to get picks on top. I want to down tier to a player at the same position who I think, could be like nearly as good and like give me as many picks or as good a quality picks as I can get on top, and that's going to be the easiest way to get 25 rookie picks right now.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I was thinking about if I wanted to get picks in like certain league, just depending on like the roster I have, like it might have to like come off literally like Jefferson or Chase, but like. I've been just kind of like anti doing that just because the teams I have built, I don't really need, there's not much to like desire for to replace with. But if I have teams, there's a team I have JSN in, and I thought he might be a good, it's not that he's maybe he still has more room to go, but it was a down year receiver just overall.
Yeah.
He technically had a really good season. Like,
Yeah.
I know that for every person it might be different. Someone might like love JSN and just not want to hear that, which is completely fine.
Well, it doesn't mean like, it should be said that like if we're saying like, you should down tier from this player, that there's a good player to, trade off of. It doesn't mean that they're bad. If anything, it means that like they have value, that people like them, and that like, that's why you can down tier from them because there's actually a demand for them. Like if the player wasn't any good, no one would want them. You couldn't down tier. So it's really not a bad thing necessarily.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, and just for specific players, some of them, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would just never consider, whatever, like, dealing him, or maybe it's like a lad or whatever. Like for me, honestly, like I own a couple Londons, and like I just don't really see myself coming off those Londons. Everyone's got their own player. Yeah. But like I've been thinking about it, and like, even though it's just like so impossible to trade Chase and Jefferson, and like we mentioned this before, but like even if I wanted to trade Chase or Jefferson or whatever other player might be that tier, I guess you can throw like Neighbors kind of like right there, and Lamb. Even if I wanted to trade them, they're still like 24 years old, so like. Unless someone has a gun to my head and I like, the league's ending, unless I have to trade them, then I'm just gonna hang on to them for a couple more years because like if they're going down, what are they going down?
Right.
It's not much unless they something just absolutely tragic happens, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, but I think the reason that
um,
you consider like trading off for like Jamar Chase right now is because like you'll probably never get more for him than you can right now after the season he just had. So like, in the league that we co-managed together, we did send out a tear down trade offer, to send away Jamar Chase. And we were asking for a lot and it got
yeah,
declined.
yeah. Like
But
it's got to be like ridiculous is the
it's
point.
gotta be
Yeah,
kind of ridiculous to
yeah,
do it
yeah,
though.
yeah.
But like
You
the
would know, like I
point.
would never take it for like fair value. Like I think we asked for like 2 firsts, and like we thought like one of them could be really good, 26 first, and we're getting like Marvin Harrison, who we think can like come
Yeah,
in.
I think we sent out a
Um,
couple, but yeah, one was for Marv and it got declined. And then we also I think we did one for Garrett Wilson where we wanted like Garrett Wilson, like I think it was like the 103,
yeah,
104, something like that, one of those like early firsts. And then also like
like
a
a,
first and
yeah,
26 that was like at least had a chance to be
yeah,
like, mid or,
yeah, and
something
that
like that. So
yeah, and that is a good team for like okay, like we actually do. I mean, we did get a
yeah,
down tier off, but like we
we
actually
needed it.
do
Yeah.
need assets. Like most of our
Yeah.
teams generally aren't going to be like that.
Right.
But for like other people, yeah, I mean, yeah, that is what like obviously Jamar
Yeah,
Chase this season.
because on that team, like we were struggling a little with our flex spots,
Yeah,
looking ahead to this,
yeah,
coming season. So that was like the perfect team to be like, okay,
yeah,
if we can get a boatload for
yeah,
Jamar Chase, something that's kind of ridiculous, like we got to consider doing
yeah,
that. So we sent out a couple offers, they didn't get accepted, but we did down tier Jalen Hurts, and I think we got a pretty nice deal there. So
yeah,
if I remember correctly, we sent away in the trade Jalen Hurts and Joe Mixon, and we got back Baker Mayfield, Trey Benson, and the 112 and a first and 26. So we were pretty happy with that. So like that probably gives us like enough, getting like the 112 there to kind of play with. That probably gives us enough like extra value that like we probably don't like need to down tier Chase anymore because we got that one done. But I do think that was like a good example of like
yeah,
the kind of down tiers you should consider if you're like have like a weakness in your
yeah.
starting lineup.
Yeah, and it makes sense with Chase because yeah, the season he did have like someone actually might overpay you, but like if you own, so let's say it's Jefferson or Lamb, who like had not even disappointing, being the wide receiver two is not disappointing, but you just didn't have like the game changing
Yeah.
fantasy season.
Yeah.
Like for me, it just you see because then you're not gonna get like that recency bias, like just complete overpay like you might get for Chase right now. It
Right.
just kind of feels like there's just about no chance I'm gonna deal them. Maybe if it's for like some nuts player at another position that I want, like sure,
Right.
but I'm probably not gonna come off them at a reasonable price. But when you go just down that tier, like I'm looking at the receivers below, and it's like, I'm looking at like the Pukas and the Nikos, and I'm like, okay, I'll hold those guys, and the fact like I think they're safe. But you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm looking at JSN. And I don't know, maybe he was like the wide receiver 7 to 9 or something last season. I can't exactly remember, but
I think he
like,
was kind of like back end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver two kind of thing. I could look it up.
yeah, and if we get that number, but it's just like, do I see him finishing higher in his career like than that finish that he just had, even though it was kind of like a fake, it's kind of like the Christian Kirk top, wide receiver one season. Like I'm not trying to discredit the GSN season, but like, his value is like greatly, increased off this season. It really wasn't that game changing of a fantasy season, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
You
for
know what
sure.
I
I
mean?
mean, especially with it being a down year receiver, that like even if you finished
Yeah,
as like a top 5 or top 12 receiver, like it really didn't feel like that
yeah,
impactful for the most part. You know what I mean?
yeah. And
Because it was
what I'm saying is like this is a good example actually from last year. Was James Cook finished as a top 12 running back, but
yeah.
like he was not a top 12 running back. You know what I mean? It was like 1 or 2 games at the end of the season that like got him there, but like maybe he was a top
The past season or the one before?
the season before. You
Oh,
know what I
I
mean?
see. Yeah,
So like it did say he was top 12 running back, and you had to pay prices like that.
yeah.
But like he definitely was not a top 12 running back that season.
Yeah, yeah. And
'Cause-
then in terms of points per game this past season, JSN finished, I guess 20th in points per game. He was
yeah,
probably, let me see what he was in terms of just his overall finish, total points. Let's see, season. In terms of total points, he finished as the wide receiver 9. So yeah, you were right. Wide receiver
Yeah,
9.
so he was there, but he was, yeah, there you go. He was, I didn't know that. He was 20, wide
Yeah,
receiver
wide
20
receiver
in
20
points
was
per
the points per
games.
game.
And
Yeah.
that really reflects, like, how I recall him, because, like, I literally
Right.
had him on a team, and, like, I could never remember myself being like, oh, man, like, woo, JSN, like, won me the week. Obviously things, maybe he is doing that next year. I'm just saying at his price, like, he does stick out as, like, a receiver to me
Yeah.
that I just don't know if I'm seeing them top that. And then you could have like a deal, just like something off the top of my head. I
Mhm.
feel like you could kind of get, depending on draft capital and stuff, a very similar player in him, like a Gabuka. Maybe you get like the pick to take a Gabuka, but
Yeah.
like you get a freaking first on top in
Oh
2026.
yeah. I rolled the dice on that.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's just like, or you're just getting like another veteran receiver. I can't really. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I can pull a name, but like I
Yeah.
was thinking is maybe you get like a mid first or whatever would be the difference maker, but you get
Yeah.
like a guy that kind of just people don't love right now, but it's like Jaden Reed or something like that.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Um,
Buy low.
yeah,
Yeah,
you get
and
a
that's
player
the
like
thing. Like,
that.
yeah, when you're down tiering, like it's great when you can like down tier to a guy that you're like buying low on that you think has a chance to
Yeah,
like increase in value. That's kind of undervalued in the dynasty market. So yeah, like if you're a Jaden Reed believer and think that like his value is going to go up, like that's the perfect kind of guy to down tier to. So like yeah, I mean sounds obvious,
yeah,
but yeah, you want to move off of if you're doing the down tier, you want to move off of someone that you think is kind of peaked in value and their value is going to go down, and you want to down tier to someone who you think value is going to go up. And yeah, I mean, I've made a lot of down tier trades where like I've ended up with like the better player, even though like I was the one that got like things on
yeah.
top. And so like that's not a guarantee to happen, of course, but like when you do it right, like that's going to happen, at least every once in a while. And that's kind of the genius of the down tier trade.
Yeah. I just think that this year at receiver, specifically at receiver, I've come to realize that that's your really good down tiers this year are gonna be at receiver, just because there's not that many in the draft. It's not the strength of the draft,
Mm.
and then it's just so hard to say it's a good idea to down tier off guys that are just so damn good, like Puka and stuff like that. But once you're like below that, you technically could put like London and Ladd and like Marv and stuff in there, but like those guys, like I would be much more hesitant. Would have all those guys ahead of JSN personally.
Yeah.
So like JSN just kind of marks like the first guy there where like
Mm.
I could easily see myself like zero attachment, just like trading off them high.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other receivers you can kind of think of that are just kind of below, but like Bucky Irving at running back would
Mm.
be like another one. Like I
Yeah.
know like he could just completely have a great season, but maybe it's like not next year, but it's like it's in 2026, and
Mm.
just like the wheels are just like it's just like gone. Like the stories already came and went,
Yeah.
and you could have like Marvin Harrison for him or something like that. Like it's just
Oh yeah, I mean, if you could turn Bucky Irving into Marvin Harrison, and you could figure out something else at running back, like yeah, I'd be all about that. But yeah, I love Marv as a buy low. Brees Hall, I love as a buy low.
right, yeah.
That's one we've talked a lot about. But like, I mean, he costs like half as much as he did a year ago,
Yeah.
and like, I really don't know if that much has changed. Like, he just kind of had like one semi down year,
Yeah.
mostly because he was injured. So it's like he's still only 23 years old. And yeah, I love Drake London as a buy. Like, I mean, he finished the season really hot with Penix in there. So like, if you are doing a down tier from like a stud like Jamar Chase, like Drake London is a guy like would be one of the first guys I would target. And it's like, how many firsts, how much stuff can I get on top of Drake London? But like, I think that could end up being a really juicy deal that could age really well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were talking about London before, but he is kind of like one of those receivers. Like he's just kind of on that brink of like, you got to take him after he's gonna be after in a startup every time. Like the Nico and the Pukas and all that stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like he has shown an ability since getting a quarterback this past year
Yeah.
to like actually he was also top 10 receiver, but I'm just like more sold on like I don't know. I'm just more sold on everything to do with Drake London and that continuing. Whereas like, JSN, who's just right there, and actually that's a great like kind of just 1v1 because they are just like literally I think back to back on anywhere you look.
Yeah.
There's some question marks with the quarterback and all that stuff, and you know, yeah.
Yeah, I also think A-Chain is just kind of being like slept on and forgotten about a little bit. I mean, if you look at his like points per game when Tua was in there,
Yeah.
I mean, like it was absurd last season. I don't even think people like fully realize that. So that's another guy. Like, I mean, I'm not like dying to like trade off a Gibbs or Bijan or whatever, but like if I were, like, what can I get on top of A-Chain? I think that could be really sneaky.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's true. Like, just because I just don't know if anyone's trading him.
Yeah,
Like
he's not easy to get. I still feel like he's not easy to get.
Yeah, because
So.
I tried so hard last year to get a trade. Like, I didn't have him on any team. Didn't end up with him on any team, and I probably tried the hardest of anyone to like trade for him specifically, and it just wasn't happening. Before the season.
What would you need? Let's say from Jahmyr Gibbs specifically, what would you need on top of A-Chain to like get off of Gibbs right now? Like, does it need to be a first? Like, could it be like a second?
That's the thing. I don't think you'll get a first, but like with a player as good as Gibbs and Bijan, like I'm just not taking any less than a first. To go to A-Chain.
Like, how much of a downgrade is A-Chain even from Gibbs? Like what's really the difference?
I just think the difference could be in like what we're looking at as a career here. So it could be a good decision for you to go down to Chain to kind of ride him out and then flip him again, like if that's the route you want to go. But if we're just talking like I do think there is easily a first in there in value. Obviously, like a Chain, we got injury concerns. He's not a I know that it doesn't really matter that much, but he literally isn't like a top 14 pick like those other running backs. Like it's just such a we know that they're gonna have amazing careers. They can withstand injury. If they tear the ACL, they're gonna maintain value. Like if that happens to Chain, if his leg falls off, like he's not gonna maintain value. That's like that's his entire strength, and then you get all the injury concerns. So.
I mean, Gibbs is like relying on his speed as well, right?
Yeah, but he's a top 14 pick, or what I mean, like people.
So it's a little bit of like perception and like kind of that ADV, our artificial dynasty value, right? To some degree,
it's like insurance, Like
that's kind of like Gibbs is more his value is more instant, like right.
Like you can survive, and then you could survive a crazy injury with Gibbs, but like if that happens to Chain, like his value is. Falling out the roof. And a good example, I know it's not remotely close, but like I just have another running back, and it's just unfortunate because I thought Pacheco was gonna smash this season. And I think he was in his first 2 games, but then he broke his leg, and then we came back. What's his dynasty value? Like he wasn't the same obviously because he's playing off a broken leg, so now his dynasty value is just like absolutely crashed. So. That's kind of my point, is just like if that were to happen to Chain, like he's not going to recover anywhere near the same in dynasty value as like a Gibbs or Bijan.
Yeah. I mean, even like Breece Hall. I mean, I know Breece Hall doesn't have the same draft capital as like Gibbs and Bijan, but like even he's like a little bit of a cautionary tale because like look how his dynasty value just like cut in half. Just because of one season that was like good but not elite. You know what I mean?
You know what's interesting with him is. That actually doesn't even because that has happened. Like he has gotten a huge drop, but he actually went up in value after he tore his ACL. Like from the start of his rookie season, preseason, he had actually gained value to the next offseason after tearing his ACL, and he didn't have first round capital. So I know it's kind of like, I think the difference with him is like people know that he is like first round talent running back. He just was like the 33rd pick or something. It was like
But yeah, he was like such a stud as a rookie that like, once he tore the ACL, he was still like so young and he was so awesome when he was healthy that like I think people were willing to like forgive it. Like now that he's like a few years into his career, it's like he didn't his season wasn't elite, so like just cut his value in half. But like that's why he's such a great buy right now. So
I just think
it could happen though. So we know running back. Certainly like volatile assets, so like there's no question.
Yeah, exactly.
But if there's anyone that is somewhat insulated, it's like Bijan and Gibbs for sure.
Yeah, like those would be like basically the only two other than I would call like Bucky the opposite of that. Just again like it's you can completely outperform your draft capital and all that stuff, but like people aren't doing that really for Kyron. I know he still is actually kind of getting respect in like startups and stuff, but like people just don't care about Kyron. It seems like, whereas like Bucky,
Yeah, well, I think Kyron's a good buy. Like he could even end up signing like a second contract with the Rams. Like I'm starting to think more and more that Blake Corum was just drafted to be like Kyron insurance.
yeah,
And I'm not
it could
ever
be.
going to be the guy there.
Yeah, I mean, it could certainly be. Like I was kind of, I mean, I was confused by the pick, but I guess I did own two shares, but like one of them was like Madness, which was like deleted. But like,
Right.
I really wasn't too worried because if I was, like, I would have just drafted Corum in that league where I owned. Like I had the chance to just draft Corum and get the handcuff, but I just like really didn't. I wasn't that worried about like just losing the job. And yeah, I mean, everyone and their mother seemed to think like, Corum was going to come in there and instantly take the job or whatever, and compete for the job. And yeah, none of that. Ended up happening. He probably is more of like a handcuff type.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I like Corum. Like, I mean, I think he'll do well if he gets the opportunity, like through injury. But I'm just not convinced he's ever going to like be the guy. I'm just kind of my gut feeling on it.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think Kyron's a good running back to down here. If you're trying to like get off someone like I don't think it's a bad idea to get off of like a Derrick Henry, like someone like that. So it's like I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure who's worth more in Dynasty between like Henry and Kyron. But if Henry's worth more, like I'd definitely take Kyron and take something on top of it, or I'd even pay a little to get to Kyron if I needed to.
Yeah, Kyron's definitely like not like miles ahead of him, but like in a startup, like a couple rounds ahead at least.
Okay.
Like Kyron actually does go pretty high in like startups. Like it's funny just because like there's always like someone in your league that like will respect him.
Yeah.
But like the thing is like it doesn't mean like all the like 11 other people.
Yeah, because it kind of seems like once you get away from the startup, like just their market value, it seems like you usually get a decent deal on Kyron.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I guess like if you were asking about like the Gibbs, let's just say you had to trade off Gibbs or Bijan, like a chain would be obviously really nice to like try and recover those points, but like if I'm concerned at all about like insulation and like trying to maintain my team's value up for whatever reason. Which is oftentimes the case.
Yeah.
What I'm getting from going to those guys to a chain probably like isn't enough to like, make me happy. Whereas like that's a good point though. Like Kyron, because he doesn't have the question marks and he doesn't have like that big of a market in like in actual leagues. It seems like, like you might be able to get like easily a couple good firsts.
Oh
Kyron.
Yeah. Right.
And then maybe you're riding like a second contract on Kyron, and he's just like performing far better than expected when you traded for him. So like, I guess that's what I would say is like my preference if I were to go off one of those running backs. And he just like has like the same value. And it's like they're both non like elite draft picks.
Yeah. So it's like you'll probably get like somewhat similar production. And like
there's just 1 year difference.
Like similarly risky of like losing their value.
There's just 1 year difference in contracts. Like that's literally like the difference between them.
Yeah, I like that call. So yeah, I mean if it makes sense for your team to like peer down from Bijan or Gibbs, like see if you can get like Kyron and 2 firsts. Like I think that'd be a pretty nice deal.
Yeah, and then Kyron also was like an awesome running back again in fantasy, and he was actually pretty disappointing. For whatever reason, he was maybe kind of in that Brees thing where like. He was less efficient, maybe because he was just it's impossible to be that good 2 years in a row.
Right.
But, they had a lot of injuries with their O-line. So who knows, like, what exactly happened there. Like, I don't know. But I do think Kyron, like, if you watch him, he's, like, actually a good running back.
Really,
for
sure.
So.
By the way, Prep sent me another offer. I had mentioned, I'd offered St. Brown for the 101. He still hasn't, that offer's still pending. He's still considering it, but he sent me the separate offer for St. Brown. He offered me the 103 and 304. So that was a pretty easy decline right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, the straight swap offer is still out there. So hopefully he realizes that I'm not taking anything less. So we'll see what happens.
In most leagues you would not get Amon off the 101. And in startups, it's not even close. In like just in like plain leagues without weird settings, like
Right. I mean, yeah. Like, why
You know,
on earth would I like take the 103 over Amon Ra? I mean, like, I might not even get
well,
like
the 101 is not even close.
Hill in there. So it's like,
Yeah.
why would I just gamble on some like random rookie receiver? It's not like Marvin draft or something. So it's just like
the boards I've been seeing, the Amon Ra goes like the 1-2 turn, like literally every time. Obviously,
oh yeah,
you know, no later than 2-2, and you know the 101s go into like the back of the second. I think I even saw it go to the third one time. So like just even those two players alone in like standard scoring, are like they're not very close.
Right, exactly. So I think with it being point per carry, I think that's what makes it a fair trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I also did. You know, I had also sent out. I don't think I mentioned it, but I also sent out like an offer of like St. Brown for Gibbs and like St. Brown for Bijan. I heard back from the Bijan owner, and he basically just said, "Here, this was his response." He said he said, "Sorry, 0.25 point per carry makes Bijan a lot more valuable."
Okay.
So I don't know if I agree a lot more valuable, but like, yeah, I agree. I'd rather have Bijan. That's why I sent the offer, obviously. But yeah. I said I understand that. You know, I asked him if he was interested in countering. So we'll see what he says to that. And I haven't heard back from the Gibbs owner yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But I wouldn't be surprised if like Prep eventually accepted that offer of St. Brown for the 101. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think that would be pretty fair. But
all right, should we wrap this up here? What do you think?
Yeah, I gotta get going here. I gotta watch. It's the Severance watch party tonight.
Oh, nice, awesome. Okay, yeah, I promise I'm gonna start watching that this week. Yeah, especially with our new league being Severance themed. You know, I definitely got to be able to be part of like the inside jokes and gifts that are happening in the chat. So
there'll be plenty. When you watch like. It's a very good like world building like show. There's just way too many. It's just so easy to get little references. A lot of good fantasy team names to come from that for sure.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to watching that. And yeah, thank you to everyone who joined us for the stream. Great to see that we had a few people watching. So thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the channel, like the stream, and we will see you again soon.